You've said a number of things which are rather worrying, and I wish to discuss these in this open letter. Now, there are some terms within this open letter which I will explain so that you are aware of what exactly I am talking about. Here are some terms. Gender assignment. This is when a doctor looks at the primary sex characteristics of the child upon birth and determines what biological sex the baby is. This is different from the gender which the person may or may not be, and this can be altered eventually. Gender. How someone presents within society and how someone identifies in relation to society. This can be different from biological sex. I know you have a tendency to conflate the two. However, we will talk about this more later. Biological sex. The physical characteristics which are determined by biological processes, which has an influence on gender identity. Assigned female/male at birth. This is when the biological sex of the person in question has been determined by a doctor, usually around birth. The term is assigned male/assigned female at birth and refers to what the doctor sees in terms of primary sex characteristics. Transmasculine/transmasc. A assigned female at birth person, usually, who identifies as and presents as masculine in relation to society. Transfemme/transfeminine. And usually assigned male at birth person who identifies as a woman and in relation to society and culture. I think those are decent enough definitions, so... Right, let's get to the first couple of points. So now that we have our terms defined, now let's get to asking you a couple of interesting questions. Question number 1. This is a hypothetical. Let's assume that you meet someone and become very close friends with them. They present as feminine for their entire life. You actually genuinely like this person, and you get along extremely well. But one day, after years and years of knowing and liking this person, they suddenly explain that they were assigned male at birth. What do? You know this person, you like this person, you know this person means no harm, and yet this person is transgender. And this person has, to your eyes, always been a woman, so what would your opinion of them be if they came out to you as transgender? Would you think that they were really a man even though they presented as feminine enough for you to consider them a woman this whole time? Would you deliberately misgender them at this point because they were transgender now? Or would you treat them like a woman as you had before you figured out that they were transgender? Where does your line for what is and is not a woman exist? Number 2, what exactly have you done demonstrably for the advancement of women's rights? I work for a women's shelter growing crops for abused women, and I am a member of the Industrial Workers of the World /IWW, an organization which has championed women's rights since 1895. I feed abused women and support financially abuse shelters. So what exactly are you doing and demonstrably doing to help women's rights and to help women who have been abused? Question number 3. You say that the main reason that trans women exist is to infiltrate women's spaces, and by in so doing, you assume that trans women, being men in your ideology, are out to molest and harm women. Is it not sexist to assume that all men are inherently rapists by this logic? And if a trans woman passes to the point where you can't tell the difference, and you trans folks regularly cannot tell the difference, and often accuse cis women of being transgender, then how are you going to be able to tell who really is and really doesn't actually steal the vagina cold? Question number 4. Assuming, just completely assuming that your assertion that all men were rapists, which is not true, then why is it that trans women, aka trans femmes, get a much, much higher rate of sexual abuse happening to them than cis women do? If it's about privilege and men trying to become women, then why would they try to get rid of their male privilege in your eyes as well? If it's bad for women to get sexually assaulted, then, and the rates are as high as you trans-exclusionary radical feminists believe that they are, then by your own logic, isn't it bad for trans femmes to be molested at incredibly high rates themselves? Question number 5. If you think that trans people are inherently mentally ill or whatever, and therefore are bad and therefore are delusional, which I am not certain is your position, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if it were, then why are you using the exact same rhetoric that was used in the 1960s for gay people? Back in hell, you are from the United Kingdom, where, what was his name? Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, was chemically castrated because he was a homosexual. Why are you using the same logic that would have been used for Alan Turing in order to say that trans people are inherently broken and need fixing, quote unquote? Question number 6. How does excluding trans women who present as feminine and have a female role in society helping cis women at all? By harassing them for merely existing, you are not benefiting cis women in any way, as you are not able to demonstrate any harm caused by trans women simply existing. And by assuming that all trans people are trans women, trans femme, you are inherently erasing trans masculine people, which I assume you think are trying to become men to get some privilege in their lives, when in actual fact transitioning is not a simple procedure, and it costs a lot more time, effort, etc., 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 in order for the trans mass to become socially a man. Question number 7. What was my train of thought here? I had a train of thought here, but I'm starting to lose my mind because Joanne is acting like lead paint on my fucking head here. Yes, that's the one. Question number 7. All of the studies show that having a supportive environment and gender-affirming care for trans people reduces their suicide rates immensely. In non-supportive environments, trans people have a suicide rate, attempt rate of about 40 to 50%. However, studies show regularly that gender-affirming care in a supportive environment reduces the suicide rate immensely. So why are you contributing to a problem that causes these people to commit suicide? Is it a good thing that these people commit suicide in your eyes? If so, then I have no idea what to tell you. You are a monster of a person, and if their high suicide rate is tragic to you, then why are you contributing to the problem rather than trying to help solve it? Question number 8. Do you legitimately not understand that people's loss of interest in Harry Potter may indeed be caused by your own actions? Your rhetoric against trans people might very well just not sit well with your readers and your fans, a lot of whom are LGBT. In saying you can be whatever you want and having messages within the wizarding world that you have created, then what's the problem? Polyjuice potions exist in your world. You literally had Hermione turn into a goddamn furry in the second book. So what is your problem with women becoming men? Also, you have written within the story that you're medieval, mind you, wizarding houses, which are completely and utterly ridiculous, and Slytherin should not exist in the story, but that's for another rant. You have had your medieval, you would probably be sexist rather than third-wave feminist, founders of the houses stating that women are allowed into the male dorms, but the males are not allowed into the female dorms because women are inherently more trustworthy. This does not make a whole lot of sense considering the recent creepy teacher pandemic in which female teachers who molest children are inherently glorified and the photos are the most attractive you can possibly imagine, especially if the teacher is conventionally attractive within society. A male teacher is doing the same thing to students is called pedophilia, which is. The idea that men are inherently more likely to molest women is ridiculous since lesbian rapists can exist and women can rape men as well. So I guess what's your problem with people becoming females with your world? What is the inherent? Do you not see how the messages of your world might in some cases genuinely be against the things you have said on Twitter? Question number 8, I think it is. You made Dumbledore gay after it became apparent that a lot of your readers were LGBT. Yes, there has been some criticism of Dumbledore suddenly becoming gay, but do you not realize that combined with your transphobic rhetoric and your opposition to the idea of gender, that perhaps your LGBT-focused audience might not take kindly to the fact that you are engaging in transphobia? I am genuinely curious. Do you think that Do you genuinely think that you have the pulse of your audience and that everyone who is criticizing you as doing in bad faith? Because your work is inherently flawed in so many ways, since it contradicts itself all of the time. Your magic system doesn't really inherently make sense, and you can't really have LGBT without the T. You are using the same rhetoric as homophobes when you're talking about trans people. So do not see how that might potentially alienate your fans. In fact, the official Quidditch Association has entirely decided to distance themselves from you because they believe that their sport is supposed to be inclusive and that does not include your transphobic rhetoric. You are pushing away your potential readers and consumers of your products through your rhetoric, and I don't think you understand that people legitimately don't like what you say and believe that it is at odds with the values that your setting is trying to promote. Your setting is supposed to be people can do anything they want to become anything they want, and your transphobic rhetoric flies in the face of this. If it's okay for Dumbledore to be gay in the 1940s, when society was incredibly homophobic, then what's your excuse for being transphobic in the 21st century? Why are you also inherently supporting the whole nuclear family model when you don't actually explicitly depict any non-heteronormative relationships within your work? Is that not kind of just pandering after the fact to the LGBT crowd? How can I tell that you are sincere about your pro-gay stance? You have never actually depicted an LGBT couple accurately within your books. So why should I take you seriously when you claim that you are LGBT friendly? Question number 9. Why do you insist on, if you are anti-racist, anti-homophobic, etc., as any good feminist should be, why do you exhibit a number of racial anti-Semitic stereotypes of goblins, for example, and why do you deliberately write characters in a rather racially yikes way? Why is the Irish kid obsessed with explosions and named the most racially stereotypical name you could possibly imagine? Is that not racial stereotyping, or is racial stereotyping only when it happens to non-white people? Why did you name the Chinese character Cho Chang? That is incredibly stereotypical. No Chinese person was ever named that. In fact, I'm surprised you didn't name Seamus Carbog Potato Famine. Like, really? The racial stereotyping within your work and all of the anti-Semitic tropes that you put into the goblins, and the recent game that features the goblins as a villain, why do you insist on doing this if your intention as a feminist is inclusivity? Does that not undermine the entire message of what you're trying to do? And again, the racist messages undermine the underlying message of your setting. And besides, house elves are literal racial slaves. Does that not strike you as kind of yikes that your wizards literally have racial slaves that are magically bound into their servitude while trying to preach a message of inclusivity? Is that not kind of problematic in and of itself? But then again, they're not human, so it doesn't matter. Well, they are clearly sentient and able to understand their situation. So, really, socially, they're essentially the same thing as humans. The only difference is one race claims that it's superior to another. Also, why have an entire house at Hogwarts dedicated to fucking racism? You literally created a house within your setting that generates the magical equivalent of fucking nuts. The fucking Nazis. Does that not strike you as kind of, I don't know, problematic? These people literally want, you literally generated in your setting a house which not only demands a racially pure minority view within it, which is obviously incredibly problematic in the first place, but it also creates an echo chamber whereupon racist ideas spread and fester without anyone to challenge it. Why does Slytherin exist at all? And for the record, if all of the racists are created by this one house and these racists turn into the setting's equivalent of Nazis constantly, and everyone acknowledges that house creates Nazis and, I don't know, the magical equivalent of fucking Hitler, then why doesn't, and especially after all of the Battle of Hogwarts, when the fucking racists all decide to side with magic Hitler, why is Slytherin still a thing that exists years and years after the Battle of Hogwarts? Surely somebody would have figured out that creating an echo chamber of magic Nazis would be a good idea. But for some reason, the wizards in your setting are too stupid to realize that getting rid of the thing that's creating all of these magic Nazis should not be a thing. Your setting can't even figure out that a fucking pencil is a thing. So your wizards are inherently more stupid than by definition. So what is the whole point anyway? Surely Hermione could have brought a motherfucking drawing pencil to school as a paper and said, hey, these are what muggles write with. They don't require magic and they're a lot more convenient than quills. And just bring a bag of pencils to school. Like, none of your setting makes any logical sense. I get it, it's for the medieval ambiance, but surely a single muggle-born could have figured out what a fucking pencil is and brought it to school with them. Your setting is legitimately nonsensical. Your setting contradicts itself all the time. See the law of elemental transfiguration, whereupon things are inherently, which food or drink is not allowed to be summoned, but it's summoned all the time in the other books. And there are literally magic books that there are literally books within your setting that says, oh hey, you can just create something, an entire feast for an entire family in 1 minute using magic. This makes no logical sense and is a contradiction. You can't even write a self-consistent narrative, and to write a narrative which includes large and enshrines, mind you, large amounts of racism, and have a setting which creates magic Nazis, but you're going to tell me that gay Dumbledore that's never actually shown outside of your tweets and the new stuff that isn't part of the 8 movies, you're going to tell me that you're LGBT friendly when you literally have slavery included and enshrined by the setting, which even Hermione figures out is wrong, and everyone else does not for some reason, and you create a system which enshrines magic Nazis. You're going to tell me that you're a champion of LGBT rights just because after the books were written, you magically decided that the Dumbledore being gay would appeal to the gay people. I see through it for what it is. You are attempting to engage in rainbow capitalism. Yeah. You are attempting to pander to gay people while excluding trans people with your transphobic rhetoric, and people are starting to see through it. In fact, there are polls done where people have asked about whether or not they agree with you, and LGBT people overwhelmingly do not like what you have to say. You are alienating these people, and in fact, an entire collection of your books that have been signed by you. No one is willing to buy this set because your name being attached to them actually depreciates the value due to the fact that people are wisely thinking that your rhetoric is a sinking ship. Just because a couple dozen people have said, yes, I'm trans and I agree with you, does not undermine the fact that the vast majority of trans people absolutely hate your guts and see you as the wretched transphobe that you are. Do you not see how being transphobic hurts your brand and hurts your attempt at pandering to the LGBT community while also engaging in racism and anti-Semitic shit? Do you not think that it is kind of that pandering to the LGBT community might be seen as homophobic, as if, why is a product homosexual? Don't question what the person who's made it says homosexual. I have made Dumbledore gay. Buy my product homosexual. Do you not see how a lot of gay people might see this as incredibly offensive? Do you not legitimately see that the gay community criticizing you might be doing it in good faith? I don't think that you will see this letter or pay attention to anything that it has to say. You will probably write this off as mansplaining, even though I have less gender than your flower pot and I have made actual points and cited actual things. You will probably claim that I am hurting women or something when I have literally done more for women, and the IWW has done more for women than your transphobic ass ever will. I look forward to your response if you ever respond. I am certain that it will be both delightfully amusing and it will provide more material that will help you dig your grave even further. Do not cry to me when your transphobia completely crumbles the value of the Harry Potter brand as it has already done. Sincerely, Beta 8088.